Hi, everybody. It's Susan, and I'm back to talk about the Gemini New Moon that's coming up next week on Monday, the 15th of June. I'm recording this on Monday, the 8th of June, so it's actually the third quarter phase of the previous new moon that was in Taurus. So much to tell you. I haven't been able to post for a while. I did my annual, biannual migration from Spain back up to Brussels, but the 2.5 hour direct flight turned into a 35-hour odyssey with countless airports and being stranded by Lufthansa in Nuremberg, of all places, along with dozens of other passengers. So it's been quite a journey. That was with the dog, and unfortunately, she wasn't in great form as we were traveling as well. So, really, really challenging event. Um, I mean, these are luxury problems given the current state of affairs, but it did actually kind of wipe me out for about a week. So I wasn't able to really do much. I lost a few days of work, and there was just no way I could do any videos. In the meantime, life goes on. Astrology passes us by, and things carry on in their merry old way. I also have Saturn in a square to my moon. It's just passed now. It's in a separating square to my moon, but that is going to be a feature of pretty much now until next May. Because Saturn is where it is now in around the 13th degree mark, where even today this is where Saturn is. It's going to be there for quite some time. Remember, Saturn is stationing at 14 degrees 45 arc minutes of Aries, and that will be on the 26th of July. So pretty much June and July, Saturn is going between 13 to 15 degrees. 14:45 is nearly 15 degrees of Aries. And if you have anything cardinal between, say, 12, which is what my moon is in Cancer, say 12 to what we could say is 15, 16 degrees of any cardinal signs, Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, you'll be feeling this. And honestly, I'd rather have the Saturn return back than the Saturn squaring my moon because it was pretty brutal. Um, anyway, remember, moon represents your home, your family, your health, your body, all those things, the mind. Anyway, it's also, by the way, squaring the United States sun exact this week. So the events of this moment and this whole week, which is building to the exact square from Uranus to the north node or to the nodal axis, that's not great for the United States. So there's going to be something pretty dramatic happening. Now, the sun can represent the ruler of the country as well. And I know we've said this before, but the president, of course, so-called ruler, so-called of the United States, is being squared by Saturn. So there is going to be something going on this week that will be history making, I have no doubt. And this will continue, as I said, as long as Saturn is within this orb of degree, which is really intense, pretty much all of June and into May of 2027. This is the theme, back and forth with a bit of a reprieve as we go into the end of the year when Saturn backs down to about 8 degrees, 7 degrees, 55 arc minutes of Aries. So fun times, intense times, and I want to present this new moon as a continuum of other things that are already happening. And as I've already done the video on the Venus Gemini, sorry, the Venus Jupiter conjunction, that's at 25, almost 26 degrees of Cancer, really auspicious, very favorable transit, although not necessarily going to bring things raining down on people in the way that they might like to see them. Please watch that video to understand why it won't necessarily be the benefic, good fortune, great blessing, good luck, abundance that everybody on YouTube seems to be promising. Nonetheless, it beats a kick in the pants, as I've said, and this is going to be part of the energy of this lunation because we're building up to the end of the previous lunar cycle, which is this moon cycle since the Taurus new moon, so of the month, and it's also the end of a cycle that has come over the last 3 years. Now, let me give you these dates because these are really interesting dates to keep in mind. In good Gemini form, I'm going to give you lots of things to think about, details, dates, and points that you can add up over the last few years, because not only is this Uranus squaring the nodes, I feel obviously really tied into events of the last, in fact, 4 years for Uranus. but also very much part of this lunation cycle, which brings us ahead in time from this point for 3 years. So this is not just about this lunation. As always, there's going to be a broader cycle that we can follow. So we have the mini lunation cycle, which is the 28, 29-day cycle of a typical lunation. But we're looking also at the 3-year cycle, and that's what we call the lunar families or the lunar gestation phase. And I've done a whole video on describing that. I had somebody in the comments recently say, none of this makes sense. And I understand that if you don't listen to what I'm saying here in terms of the gestation phase representing the degree point of the lunation and not the actual movement of the moon in the sky. So we track the lunar families based on the degree of the sign that the lunation is happening, starting with the new moon and going through the first quarter, the full moon phase, which is the halfway phase, and then the third quarter phase, and then back to the next new moon, which is the closing of the previous cycle. So let's come to the previous cycle before we jump into the new one, and you can see what has come up through these last 3 years that you're closing out now. And I'll get to Uranus in a minute before we move on then to the Gemini lunar chart. So the previous cycle, and this will all be in the description box below. So before you get into your keyboard questions, just click on more below the video below every video. There's loads of information, how to get in touch with me if you want a reading, learning different things about different mechanisms that I'm using here, why I use the whole sign houses, for example. There's a video on that link below. And then the lunation families, you can also find out exactly how that all works. And that's all below this video. So the previous cycle began on the 18th of June, Paul McCartney's birthday, 2023. And that was at 26 degrees, 43 arc minutes of Gemini. So again, for anybody who's listening to these degree points, if you know your chart, you would give or take 2 or even 3 degrees for a lunation. You can go up to certainly 3 degrees on either side of a lunation. So for everything I'm saying, you can add and subtract 3 degrees, and this will be impacting you. And if you have planets there, of course, that impacts those planets, and the lunation, the quality of the lunation is expressing what is happening to that planet. So in this case, something very new, insightful, and inspiring in that Gemini way. So this is the new cycle that began as of 2023 on the 18th of June, which we're closing out with this lunation on the 15th of June now in 2026. And of course, in its own way, it was the closing of a previous 3-year cycle. I'm not going to keep going down the line. It will never end this video. So the first quarter of that particular lunation, which started 3 years ago, was the 17th of March, 2024 at 27 degrees of Gemini and 3 arc minutes. And then after that, we had the full moon phase. So that was the full moon that was on the 15th of December, the Gemini full moon, 2024 at 23 degrees, 52 arc minutes of Gemini. And then the third quarter phase, which was last year, the 14th of September 2025. And that was this closing out phase where you realize the things that have been accomplished and moving on from those things. You're now moving into preparing for the letting go phase or the new thing that's coming, which is now. So this is that culmination point, and it's the or at least the ending point. In English, we have this sense of culminating something, meaning ending, but also the fullness of something, which we describe full moons as. If this is a new moon, I'm confusing you by using that word, but it is something coming to an end as well because it's the end of that lunar cycle. So that was the previous 3 years. And now we have this new moon. And this new moon, before I give you these dates, is tied into something that is an extraordinary event that we haven't seen for over a century. That is the square from a Gemini, the Uranus in Gemini to the lunation, so the lunar nodes, the north node being in Pisces and the south node being in Virgo. And that particular configuration, not at this degree, but at that particular configuration, we have not seen that since the middle of the 19th century. So we're looking at something extremely rare in its configuration. But anyway, the fact that it's punctuated by a number of different rare things, if we come to, for example, right now, as I'm doing this, we're building up to this Venus and Jupiter conjunction. as this is going on in the week or the days building towards this lunation. It's actually exact on the 9th, and it could be the 10th where you live, but it's already very, very strong. So the 8th, 9th, 10th, and even the 11th, as it's separating, still a very, very tight configuration with this really lovely benefic coincidence here in Cancer. And do watch that video. It's a separate video. I don't want to have to go over all the extra details each time, or we'll just never end. But why I'm pointing that out is because when we have this unusual event, one unusual event following another, and then we have this new moon, I really feel we need to consider all of it as a package. As always, really, we look at the whole chart always and see what's going on with the chart to try and understand these cycles. So if we're looking at the Uranus in a square, I'm just going to pull this to once again to now. We're going to go um, just a couple of days from now. So on Friday the 12th, this is universal time. This is when the Uranus square the nodes is going to be happening. And that dynamic, so it's going to be exactly at 2 degrees 41 arc minutes of these respective signs. So we have Gemini, Pisces, and Virgo all in this unusual T square. And of course, the nodes are always in a permanent opposition to each other. They will always carry the same degrees. And whenever anything comes into the midpoint of that, that's considered to be a T square, or that's the square to the nodes. It's also known as the bending of the nodes. In this case, we've got then the nodes that are moving away from the north node, moving away from Uranus, and Uranus is moving towards the south node. And why this is really interesting is that what we're looking at is a bigger cycle where we're very much in the middle of something that is a continuum of this much older story that impacts this particular quality of time, which is this lunation as well. So let me just pull up. We'll get back to the moon in a minute. This is very Gemini, by the way, hopping all over the place. I have my Jupiter in Gemini, which the moon is conjoining. Um, so what we have here is what started in I thought I saved that. Hang on just a minute. Recently, there we go. So on the 31st of July, 2022, if you hearken back, because it'll feel like a century ago after the times that we've been living in. So we hearken back to the 31st of July and including the 1st of August. So that was really, again, a very strong continuum of time over a space of more than a day, where Mars with Uranus, with the North Node, were all together at this roughly 18 to 19 degree point of Taurus. So really it's going from, we could say even the 28th, 29th of July of 2022, and all the way through till the 2nd of August, 2022. So this really could pull in 17, 16, 17 degrees of Taurus all the way through till 19 or even 20 degrees because the movement of Mars is very slow at that time as well. A big, intense moment in time. Go back and look in your own life at what was going on, because that was the beginning of this cycle between Uranus and the North Node. So things don't happen randomly. In astrology, everything is a cycle. And things repeat, the patterns repeat. And here, what you're going to notice is that there's a repeating pattern of Mars here with this cycle of Uranus and the nodes. And Mars is never going to be straying very far from this degree point in the middle of Taurus. So here we have Mars again going up to 18, 19 degrees of Taurus. Now, what we have, if we look at, pardon me, if we look at this coming forward um, to the current situation, which is Uranus, let me just pull it in as today. There we go. We're going to just pull this in for the Friday's story of Uranus squaring the nodes. What did I say? We said it was going to be the 12th at roughly 2 degrees 41 arc minutes. And here where we have Mars again is right back to where we were on the 31st-ish of July, 1st-ish of August of 2022, 4 years ago almost, where they met up with the North Node, which was a pretty intense moment in time. And again, remember, in those days, we were grappling with a number of different events that feel almost like background news by this point. But certainly, Ukraine and Russia was one of the huge events of that moment in time. Um, and there were also a number of things in the US administration that were questionable, including the mental fitness of the president, which nobody wanted to talk about. There was an omerta, you remember in those days, that took a couple of years for anybody to take seriously if you weren't on that same team slash cult. So this is something to keep in mind because Mars is doing its work at the same degree each time. And now if we go forward again, we're still talking about the story between Uranus and the nodal axis here, which is always going to represent massive sudden change, big events that change things in a dramatic way. Um, then we're going to go forward in time. And here what we're going to find is Uranus on the south node, what we can also call K2, and that's going to be the 3rd of May, 2030. Sounds a long way off, but it's going to speed along with the Uranus and Gemini. Everything's going to be speeding along. Things are speeding up rapidly. And so here what we have is now Uranus meeting up with the South Node that is part of this kind of wonky cycle that they keep up. And this is going to be now the opening, so the culmination point rather, the full moon point, you could call it, from the 31st of July, 1st of August of 2022, going now up to here, the 3rd of May. And again, we can add a few days on either side because they are slow moving objects. Both of the nodal axis has a mathematical point in the sky, and then Uranus takes its time as well. So really, we give it a couple of days on either side. You could say the entire first week of May in 2030. Now, our friend Mars is right here again, faithfully at that 18-degree point of Taurus. If you have anything at 18 Taurus, I'd say you're pretty heavily invested in this whole Uranus story that is happening, as I said, already this week. We're definitely in it. We're not yet, it's not something that we're sort of preparing for. We're in it. It's just that it comes in and out of exactitude. All right. So the exact will be on the 12th of June. Again, just days before this new moon in the sign of Gemini, which is where we find Uranus. So again, something to keep in mind. This is just to point out for the petite histoire, we have the Neptune sextiling Pluto. Again, this is that almost perpetual sextile between Neptune and Pluto that holds for another few years, even after 2030, and which is more of about a century long feature, which I have ascribed to, and I'm not alone in doing that, but I personally see as something to do with the lies and propaganda, which takes me back to the Uranus and Gemini squaring the nodes. And let's have a look at that then now, because that is part of this lunation. And this lunation, the Gemini new moon that's happening on the 3rd of June, sorry, the 15th of June, which is a Monday. It's universal time. I always use universal time, 3:53 in the morning. You can add time if you are in the eastern part of, so let's say, Europe, the British Isles, and then Europe and Asia. And if you are in North or South America, you would subtract the day. So it would be coming up for you on the 14th of June. And nonetheless, it's definitely still well within this intense moment of the square from Uranus to the nodes. And you want to keep in mind that notion that things are happening in this week and even in the days following the new moon. So this is baked into this 3-year new cycle that we're entering into. You can also consider this that the smaller lunation cycle, which, as I said, is roughly 29 days of the lunation, and you can see within the gap of the 29 days until the Cancer new moon that comes up later on in July, you will see events that are pertinent, but this is going to tell a longer arc of history, a bigger story. Now, notice that we have our faithful friend Mars. It's only 2 degrees off, or less than 2 degrees off, a degree and a half off from where this whole Uranus story is with the nodes. So as Uranus is squaring the nodes, we still have Mars right there. Remember, every 2 years, roughly, Mars comes back to the same point in the chart. It has a 2-year cycle with reference to the sun. So Here, what we're looking at is a big story to remember. This is something to put in the diary. Definitely keep track of these dates in your own life, looking back in time for the dates that I gave you earlier for the lunation, and looking forward in time as you go, let's say, into the 9 months ahead, into the year and a half ahead, where we get the full moon aspect of this, and then we go into the phase of the 3 years, the full 3 years as we go forward in time. So this is a really interesting way to look at the lunation cycle. I find that it rhymes incredibly loudly with events, and especially in my personal life. And I've got lots of feedback from people who are saying the same, that they will be able to track and understand events in their life by taking note of these dates. So do keep that in mind. I'll give you the dates again now, and then they will be included again in the description box below. And for those of you who find it very difficult to find the description box, I'll post those in the pinned comment at the beginning of this as well. Right, there we are. So let's go for these dates. Let me just pull those up again. And then I'll describe what this is all speaking to astrologically in the way that I'm looking at this. So this particular cycle, starting here with this new moon on the 15th of June, 2026, which is coming up on Monday. This is going to be at 24 degrees and 2 arc minutes of Gemini. And it is that closing of the previous 3 years and the beginning of this next 3 year cycle. So you think of this as a discarding moment. This maybe these days, if you're hearing me before the 15th, you can think of real radical ways of eliminating things that are coming through this Gemini area of your life. And I'll describe that sign by sign as we go forward. But just keep that in mind because it's something that can give you a theme to work with as a way of closing out and saying goodbye and thank you. Out the door you go to the last 3 years, and then welcoming in a more co-creative, perhaps conscious way of working with the next 3 years, ideally. The first quarter moon, that first quarter or opening square moon, will be on the 15th of March of 2027. So that's next year at 24 degrees and 51 arc minutes of Gemini. And that's what is known as the crisis of action. That's where we've planted the seeds now. We've understood something has ended and we're beginning something else. And now we get into that mid-March quarter lunation corresponding to this moment in time. And we look at that and say, okay, there's something here I need to maybe course correct, or I need to understand deeply, or I need to recognize I've been trying to hold on to this thing and revive it or keep it alive. It's on resuscitation, but it's not working. Let's put a DNR on this. And we move on and we find that new way to go forward into the full moon phase, which will be then on the 13th of December of next year, 2027. And that's at 21 degrees and 24 arc minutes of Gemini. And that is, again, that word culmination. That's the fullness of this moment, this cycle. This is the peak of the cycle, the awareness of what has been planted here. And that will become something quite evident. It might be something that's fruiting for you, might give you something based on what you've planted here, where you can then say, oh, this is the product of what started here. And notice that then in December of 2027. And then what we have here after that is the closing down, the winding down or the waning phase, the third quarter or the closing square of this lunation. And that's on the 12th of September, 2028. And that's at 19 degrees and 47 arc minutes of Gemini. So notice that with these degree points move backwards in time. They're not exactly lining up, but they're the ones that are hitting the closest to this particular lunation as they move backwards because of the precession. The lunations are following the precession as we move back through the zodiac, but also, of course, forward in time. And what we're finding here then is the 19 degree 47 arc minutes is the closing out of this 24 degree Gemini lunation. And that is where we realize there's this crisis of consciousness. So there's a crisis of action in the opening square, need to do something about this, need to shift something, change something, create something, adapt, or whatever it is. And then in the third quarter, it's like, oh my God, I realized this is the thing now. This is the realization, the awareness, the evaluation of what has come, what has already happened. And again, we can correct, release. This is about releasing through that wa the waning phase of the lunation, especially the last quarter phase, and releasing or maybe again reorienting, recognizing, okay, well, it felt like the right thing to do. Maybe I realized I've missed the mark completely. That's okay. I'm going to shed this, knowing that the new cycle is coming. And in preparation for the end of that cycle and the beginning of the next one, you can work with that consciously as the tying up the loose ends of this particular cycle. And then this cycle ends finally, and the new one begins on the new moon in Gemini on the 12th of June. And notice we're going back in the date, back in the degrees, and back in the dates as well as we go forward in time. And that's on the 12th of June, 2029 at 21 degrees and 29 arc minutes of Gemini. So that will be then from this moment, 15th of June, 2026, until the 12th of June, 2029. Think of this story, including the Uranus squaring the nodes from early Gemini and the Mars there faithfully hanging out in Taurus. Think of all of this as part of this bigger cycle and the story that's in there. So what does it all mean? Let's have a look. So what we're looking at here is I'm going to focus on the new moon chart, but of course there's things that are preparing for that as we go through the days ahead. One of which is, as I've already mentioned, the Jupiter-Venus conjunction. There's a whole separate video on that, so I'll let you find that. But it's this Venus now newly into a fire sign. This is where the energy starts to pick up a little bit around the air and fire quality that is going to be really predominant in the summertime. Because later in July, we'll get, especially on the 4th of July, as Saturn is squaring the US sun, Mars is going to be conjoining Uranus and with still very much a degree-based square to the node. So things will get pretty interesting. That I think is the 250th anniversary of the independence. So that is going to be really speaking loudly to the US psyche because for whatever reason, these round numbers mean more than just odd numbers, but it doesn't matter. It's still part of this ongoing phase, let's call it this new cycle of Pluto, because we're still, remember that we've had the Pluto return of the United States all the way up till 2024. And in fact, the progressed Pluto cycle was very intense in 2024, 23 and 24. So think of this as part of that package too. If you're American or you're just following American politics, like many of us are, you are also, it's worth paying attention. I personally would not be showing up with hot dogs at a public barbecue around this time. I think there's going to be a lot of surprises, things that again tie in to a bigger picture of deception. And again, this is a theme I think to keep in mind. What is the ruler of this lunation is Mercury. So Mercury is, of course, for the next 7 years ruling Uranus. Anything in Gemini is ruled by Mercury. Currently, we have Mercury actually moving quite quickly, but it's preparing to retrograde, and it's going to retrograde back to 16 degrees. And so it's already here at this point at the new moon. It's in its so-called shadow phase. So this is going to be part of the degree cycle that it's moving back through before it stops retro. It stations direct at 16 degrees. So it moves all the way to where we see Jupiter now. It doesn't quite get to the degree of Jupiter, so it doesn't even conjunct the degree point of Jupiter where Mercury begins its shadow phase. But it will get up to 26 degrees, and I think it's like 13 arc minutes of Cancer. I'll do a separate video on that Mercury retrograde cycle because I think it matters. I would have done a video on it already, but honest to God, I just, I needed to be horizontal. There was just no way that I could add anything more because my luggage, by the way, didn't even appear till 5 days after this so-called 2.5 hour direct flight. It never left Valencia, in fact. So fun and games. And so here we are. Now we're looking at a bunch of things that are kind of in suspended animation. Things are like hanging on. And this particular Mercury ruling this lunation, ruling Uranus, is in a really strong sextile to about a degree and a half with Mars. And Mars itself is considered to be in exile. It's not in the happy place that it normally would find itself in its nighttime sign of Scorpio across the way, the other side, or it's also known as being in detriment. And that matters because Mars is not necessarily going to be able to use its way of operating in its best way. It may be an advantage in the sense that it's slowing down, but it also is 12 houses away from this lunation and from Uranus, which is by definition a house of secrets and hidden enemies, things that are not necessarily working in open and honest ways. So again, keep that in mind. So this meaning of Taurus, this Taurian energy, of course, ruled by Venus, which I'll get to in a second, is all about finances. What I want to say is that this particular moment in time, where the nodal axis is, aside from all the dates I've already given you, here's another one. Around November 2007, we could go into December as well. So it would be certainly November, even preparing from October, because that was the beginning of that financial crisis. The November point being the strongest, this is exactly resonant to the degree point of the nodal axis, going all the way back to November 2007 in the financial crisis. So that was this big moment in time of what was known as this the bear. You have the bull market and the bear market. Bear meaning like bare naked, but it's represented by the animal, the bear. And so this was when the financial market collapsed, the housing market. There was a huge crisis of what was called subprime mortgages, and that was you can watch a fantastic movie about that to learn a lot. Don't bore yourself with the news. Go to the movie called The Big Short. It tells you everything you need to know about the horror of what was going on at this time. And watching it in real time, I remember it was pretty horrifying, because you could really see assets being stripped away from individuals who thought they had got themselves into the housing market and instead lost everything. And the bankers gained enormously from that. Now, why is that important? Well, because these times, remember, we're looking at this Mars lining up in the same basic degree point. So something about this whole story of dodgy finances or things going on in a way that is not entirely clear or not entirely upfront, or Mars not taking action in the way that is necessarily open and honest, or at least in this context, because we're looking at a 12th house Mars, not just by reference to the ascendant here being in Gemini as it is for the universal chart, but rather for the lunation itself. I'm speaking from the point of view of Gemini as a sign. Mars is 12 signs away from it, therefore hidden. And it will, I think, come to more clarity as we get into July, when Mars finally enters in at the end of June. Everything happens at the end of June. Wait for that video. As Mars goes into Gemini, I think that's where we're going to start to feel things revealing themselves and coming to a head. And I wish I could say it's going to be resolved and everything, everybody lived happily ever after, and it's all going to be fantastic. But there are a number of signatures, as I've already pointed out, that are resonating with things that are incredibly difficult. And we need to prepare ourselves for that psychologically, to recognize where the action or the solution or the attitude is to work with all of this. So, coming back to the ruler of this lunation, we have Mercury in the second house from the lunation, which also represents the notion of money and resources and what's available. It's in the sign of Cancer, and Mercury in Cancer can be quite sentimental, can be looking back as opposed to looking forward, can be holding on. And this will be, I think, a big theme of the Mercury retrograde in general. And that's coming up again in a separate video. But Mercury in Cancer will be there for almost 10 weeks. It's a big, long story. Um, pardon me. Remember, for those of you who got the annual readings, you'll know that all of the Mercury retrograde cycles were in water this year. We started out with the first retrograde in Pisces. Now we're getting the second one in Cancer, and then we close out the third Mercury retrograde cycle in November, October, November in Scorpio. And this is now what we're looking at here is tied in to this lunation because Cancer is ruled by the moon. Now, what's the moon doing? It's a new moon. We also call that a dark moon. When the moon is new, we don't see the moon, right? So that means that the moon is blocked out by the sun. It's too close to the sun. We don't see the moon. So now we not only have the moon 12 houses away from the sign that it's ruling, but we also have it hidden by the sun. So it adds to this quality of testiness. Here we have again this square from Uranus to the nodes. Mercury, by the way, ruling the south node that Uranus is slowly moving its way towards. Remember, right, May 2030, we're going to have Uranus moving towards this, but by that time, it's actually going to be um, in Gemini. And so there, the story is going to be uh, about something that we can't see. It's about something that is not clear. It's things happening in ways that are like, wait, did I hear that? Is that really what's going on? Now, again and again and again, you've heard me say for over a year, maybe even two, that maybe even since Pluto went into Aquarius, so that we're looking at there about 3 years, if not more. Um, we're in times where we really have to be very careful. Yeah, March 2023. That's Pluto going into Aquarius. We are living in times where things are not clear, where we're deliberately out of the loop. We're kept out of the loop of things that are happening, and the theatrical display that we're shown, which used to be called the news, is the thing that is the kind of shiny thing that we're told to look at. And these are things that we need to look at in our own life. So Gemini has this relationship to duality in the most essential way. It's the air duality, it's the mutable air sign, and it's about that flexibility in let's call it the most optimistic use of the duality. It's being hyper flexible but can also be very changeable and superficial, not engaging with depth or seriousness. Something that can be switched and turned around, no problem. Yes, I'll agree to that, but actually, yeah, I'm not going to do it. And that is this sort of shadow of Gemini, which is the two-faced quality of it. And I think we're getting that in a really, really strong way. We have to keep that in mind in these times, and especially because we've got Uranus now supercharging the Gemini energy here and added to that the square from the nodes. So with the initial impact of this square, I think we can expect things to be shocking. Of course, this is part of the description of Gemini, sorry, the Uranus in Gemini innovative, shocking, different, creative, spontaneous. It can be all kinds of fantastic things. And the closer we get into our personal life, the easier this is to work with, or let's say, the more we can mold and shape the outcomes. But the more that we pan out into a global or collective experience, the less control we have over things, and the more things can feel like they're just chaos. And I think this can be one of the ways that we need to look at this particular lunation, which is like, what is my relationship to facts? Is it like, what was that word that Colbert came up with like 10 or 12 years ago? It was called truthiness. This is truthiness, this Gemini new moon. This is the essence of truthiness. Things are not quite what they seem, but yet we're going to say, yeah, that's for sure. That's what it is. Of course, it all means that. And so we really have to live within our own degree of integrity and recognize where it is that we might be lying to ourselves, not just being lied to, because that's part of this. I'm just looking for my notes that I did while I was out walking the dog. Speaking of Gemini, that's all about multitasking. Um, so what I was saying about this business of truthiness and what is true is to recognize where we ourselves are in or out of integrity. So as I said, Gemini is pretty, fast and cheap with the facts. It can be incredibly witty, sharp, very innovative, really direct and punchy, but it's not always, it's hard to pin that Gemini down. And that's because of the changeability of its ruler, Mercury, which, as we see, is coming into its retrograde phase. It's going to slow down after in the first quarter phase of this new moon in the actual mini cycle of the lunation, the month that's coming up after this lunation. Mercury is going to prepare to slow itself down, get slower and slower as it gets towards the end of June, until it stations on the basically within hours of Jupiter moving into Leo. Mercury is going to be stationing at 26 degrees of Cancer and then slowly making its way backwards for the next 22 or 23 days. And so what we're looking at here is something that is going to change. It's going to change its mind. It's going to change its ideas. It's going to change the presentation. The things that were hidden may or may not come to light, or they may or may not be revealed as what is real, what is true. So we're going to have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. We're going to have to get comfortable with feeling out of sorts and confused and insecure around this time in this cycle of this new moon, but also in these 3 years. And so, in good Gemini manner, if we look again at that, the square that we get from the Uranus to the nodes here, we can say that part of the solution is this Uranian quality of inventiveness and finding new and creative ways of agreeing things. Gemini's all about friends and family, like extended family, cousins and siblings, so on. Um, but it's also the energy of what is shared every day with friends, like how you chat with your barista or how you might go walk your dog with your friends. This is all very familiar territory. This is the Gemini sort of where you go every day, what you do every day, your little everyday kind of activities and busyness, dropping the kids at school. It's primary school, basic education. It's the stuff of the basic description of things, that kind of daytime Mercury, which is interested in the details and the facts of things, so-called. And again, what I'm saying here is not going to be true for everyone. This is my plea to be aware of your own integrity because we're contributing to whatever's going on. We can't just sit there and point fingers and say everybody else is lying. I've got the sort of corner on the truth market. You want to understand where you are contributing. Where do you contribute slop to the algorithm? Where do you overinflate things and tell stories that are not entirely accurate? Where do you do things in a way that you are saying yes when you mean no, or saying no when you mean yes? This is where you can come back to your really close to yourself and say, no, I need to really reflect on this to plant these seeds going forward in this cycle of 3 years for this lunation. But remember, so we get to 2029, June 29 of the lunation cycle, but it's till May of 2030 that we're still working out the Uranus in its relationship with the nodal cycle, right? So this is something to keep in mind. There's going to be shifting, there's going to be changing. When Uranus meets the South Node, it's also going to be a Mercury-ruled South Node, so we're still in the same kind of ballpark of needing to question how we think about things. Another way of looking at things when they're in this T square, which is, of course, the nodal opposition, which, as I said, is always the case. They work in pairs. But also, then the square itself is opposite an empty space, which is 2 degrees 41 arc minutes in terms of the actual square of Sagittarius. Sorry, my brain is struggling here this week. Um, and that is where we can find a solution. So it doesn't have to be specific to any particular placement in your chart, but in a general sense, the early degrees there of Sagittarius are where we would put our sense of what would we work with. So again, we can find the answer in the house where Sagittarius is found in your chart. Working by whole sign is easier to figure this out, and I find it actually gives us a lot of clarity, especially if you're born really far away from the equator. This will make a lot more sense in your life. Um, and there's a whole video on that underneath every video that I do. Why do I use the whole sign house system? And so understand that the notion of Sagittarius is about big picture thinking, where Gemini is about the details. So we have to also think in terms of our bigger philosophy of life, and even what we could describe as morality. So this is where Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter and holds that sense of what is moral, what is right, what is that long game, what is the bigger picture of things. Now, this can be involving religious faith. It can even, to a certain amount of, for many of us, it can involve something to do with justice, human justice, um, what is just and fair, righteous. This is very Sagittarian. And because the answer is there, and because we still have this blessing of an exalted Jupiter, also ruled by this hidden moon, by the way, but this exalted Jupiter, we can really start to sit quietly and think, okay, what's at stake in this moment in time? What are the things that I'm risking, or what are the things that I'm being too casual about? What are the things that I'm being a bit flippant about? Where am I hoping for the best rather than taking action in the direction where I want to see results? Because remember, when the South Node hits Uranus, we're going to see the results of this whole story that began for Uranus in the end of July, beginning of August 2022. And that is the halfway point right now in the middle of June this year. So what the thing is that you want to accomplish, it's going to be really quite karmically shown in 2030. And of course, this is, if you look at the bigger picture of all of these things, if we look at the WEF and all of these bigger outer stories that we're all contending with in these ways where even 10 years ago, people were pretending these things never existed. There's no Bilderberg group, there's no none of these things that were spoken about by early whistleblowers, whether that be, David Icke back in the 90s and early 2000s, or somebody like Alex Jones, who was speaking very, very loudly and clearly even before 9/11, however much people love him or hate him, he was saying things that are being fulfilled right now. And again, I'm not getting into the uh, dialectic around whether this is a plant or whatever. That's not about this moment in time. So all I'm saying is that what people were calling idiocy and impossible and conspiracy and nutty and all of that stuff, today we are living with as a reality that everyone recognizes. Oh, this is the way it is. And why I'm saying that is because this particular moment in time is so loaded with things that are going on behind the scenes and sort of secretly and operating in a way that is not necessarily clear and above board, that we still need to hold our counsel and come really, really close to home, close to family. That's the Mercury ruling this whole story in Cancer, and then Jupiter in Cancer still saying, do the right thing, do the thing that's good for everybody, do the thing that's good for your family. It's in a semi-sextile to the moon and the sun. There, semi-sextile is difficult. They can't see each other. So there's this feeling of being in a tightly packed lift or elevator. You're somebody kind of right here on your shoulder, and you don't know what they look like, but you sense who they are, and it's not really clear how you should respond to them. And so this is that kind of a feeling of these two signs side by side. They don't really get each other. They're very different elements, different modes, different manners of expressing. And so there's a tension that is coming through this new moon and this new moon cycle that I'm trying to describe here, which has a longer arc of influence than just this moment in time. And I want to really keep mentioning that we're talking about the whole week here. I'm talking about the entire time building up from where I'm speaking to you now, the 8th of June, going forward into July. As a thing to think about and keep in mind around this bigger lunation cycle, because these are ongoing things that are shifting. So I want to come back to Venus because I briefly touched on Venus and didn't fulfill that explanation. Venus, being the ruler of Mars, is now freshly into almost at 2 degrees of Leo. So she is actually in a really strong sextile, 1 degree away from a sextile, a little bit less than a degree away from a sextile that is building. So that means she's applying to a sextile to Uranus. So Venus again representing everything to do with money and finances and our values and what is important in terms of our sense of what is harmonious and what is good for us, etc. What's our pleasure, etc. Now Venus here is ruled by the sun, and the sun is ruled by this Mercury, who's ruled by the moon, and we go back and forth in this whole bigger picture where we say, well, okay, so even Venus is a little unstable here because the energy of a sextile with Uranus can feel like this itch that needs scratching. And it's not really clear what to do about it, but there's an agitation, a desire for change, a desire for movement, but not really super sure what to do about it. And I think we're going to have to wait until time starts to unfold as Venus is also applying to an opposition with Pluto. Now, in the lunation chart that I'm doing here with it, which has it at this Greenwich Mean Time, which is the old way of saying universal time, so London time basically. Venus is pretty close to the IC, so that's the nadir, the bottom of the chart, the hidden aspect of the chart. And Pluto, however, is right at the top of the chart. And remember, Pluto is retrograde now since the beginning of May, since I think it was like the 4th of May, Pluto stationed retrograde here in the about 5.5 degrees of Aquarius. Now, Pluto is backing into a stronger sextile with Neptune, and which is again, remember, a feature of the last century or so. It's part of our bigger story, but that is part of this new story, very dynamic and new story, which I'll come back and speak about again, which is this trine to Uranus. Now, I've already done a video um, with S.J. Anderson that you'll find on my channel. We did that in April, so go back and look for that video, which talks about this minor grand trine or the bisextile or the mini grand trine, depending on what you want to call it, and Barbeau's basket. And where we're looking at all of these configurations, because as Venus is coming in here, notice that she is going to create this basket shape first. So she's the first one to get into this formation, which is really a theme from June into July of 2026, but it repeats again. So it's 4 degrees. This degree point, the sensitive point is 4 degrees of all of these signs in June, July of 2026, and then it will repeat at 6 degrees in 2027. So we're in a slow moving period of change that we are forecasting here so that you can ideally look at things with fresh eyes. And this is a very Gemini thing, the fresh eyes, the curiosity, the newness, the innovation, the spontaneity, and especially when we're involving Uranus here, picking up now on a sextile from Venus and then really starting to strengthen at almost 3 degrees here. This very, very strong already sextile with Pluto. So all of this is all in play for this new moon cycle of 3 years. Um, and again, it's going to be up to us to be as in our alignment and integrity as we can manage, because this is part of a time where when power starts to shift, as we have seen over the last 4 years, especially since Uranus hit the North Node, and as the balance of power has been shifting, which I would argue started even before, but certainly since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, where terms and conditions started to deteriorate in the United States and Europe based on the behind the scenes dealings of this whole provocation around the Russia-Ukraine war, which goes on, which continues. It's going to continue for a much longer period of time. But anyway, the point being that we're in a peak of a peak moment of change, and it's up to us to stay real. And it's going to be part of the challenge, let's say, of the air and fire dynamic where we are going to be tested in terms of being consistent or real. We're going to be tested again in terms of what allows us to feel grounded and connected to truth. And so that will be something that we owe ourselves. We owe our young people coming up. We owe the planet. We owe each other our integrity. And this can be something to really reflect on as we get into the summer, because something is changing, but what changes is not very clear. It's not it's anybody's guess how things can change, but the one thing that we have control over, and here we come back to Gemini, is our thinking, our patterns of thought. And this is where Uranus squaring the nodes in Gemini brings us that opportunity to act from that place of novelty, innovation, and thinking, keeping in mind the empty space across the way that creates then this mutable grand square, a grand cross, where we imply that there's something here at 2 degrees of Sag, almost 3 degrees at this point, which is giving us a vision. That's giving us an inspiration. Fire is all about inspiration. So all of these things can be reflected on as we move forward in time. Think this is all one continuous thing going on. It's not a multitude of little things that are in themselves going to necessarily be important. It's this moment in time as things are shifting. So pay attention to what's going on this week. And again, I've said this many times over the last couple of years, don't pay attention to the mainstream news. That's a total waste of your time. It literally is a total waste of your time. Pay attention to what is either not being said, to the things that are being said by people who have no skin in the game, who don't earn money for their presence on television or on YouTube or whatever. Listen to people who have authority based on their history and not based on something that they're trying to get at this point. So you will hear that those voices speak with level-headedness and clarity. There's an urgency, but that's not hysterical, as opposed to the voices that you might get on so-called mainstream media or commercial corporate media, which are dramatic, uh, clickbaity. That applies to YouTube, of course, as well, and have an agenda, have a very clear agenda. They will only show one side of the story. Are they using epithets to describe people? Are they saying things about people in a way that is presenting a specific way of thinking about that topic or person that doesn't allow you to consider alternative options? So these are times to stay alert. If you're confused by what you're hearing around you, then shut it all down and listen inside. Listen to what's going on. We're getting a lot of energy shifting from Cancer into Leo at this time. Over the course of the next few weeks, lots of Cancer to Leo energy coming in. And what that represents is the heart. So we have the emotional heart and the physical heart, and then the cave of the heart, the awareness of what I know. And think of, in terms of Cancer represented by the moon, that's the field of the mind. So a lot of people mistake Mercury for representing the mind. It's not the mind, it's the contents of the mind. The moon is the mind. The moon is the memory, the field of awareness of emotions, the field of awareness of lineage, of family, of love, and our connection. It's the sense of being alive that is the softer, more intuitive aspect compared to the conscious awareness of life, which is the alert, sort of outward awareness of what it is to be human, what it is to be alive. That is more solar, the Leo energy. But both have the affinity with the whole chest and heart area. In many ways, and I talk with my hands, I've got Jupiter in Gemini. In many ways, of course, Gemini does represent that area of the body, but it's more the lungs, it's the air we breathe, it's the hands, the arms, and the expression that is describing the way of communicating. That is Mercury. Mercury is about the thinking, it's about the words that we use, it's about linking the words together. Is it prose? Is it poetry? Is it music? That's Mercury. And so we want to consider here that Mercury is in the moon's sign and the moon is in Mercury's sign, but they're not seeing each other. So when things get too confusing, as in this case, when things are not yet clear or the next step is not really easy to figure out, shut it all down and come into the space of the heart, because that will never lie to you. When you come into a clear and open space, your body, which also is represented by both the sun and the moon, constitution is sun and moon, the moon is your physical body, And that's telling you enough. It's telling you everything you need to know. Are you feeling stiff? Are you feeling resistant? Are you feeling tight? Are you feeling relaxed and happy? Is there an ease and a flow? Then you're in the right space. Then keep moving in that direction. If not, if there's a constriction, know that there's thinking behind it. There's a pattern of awareness or a pattern of maybe a method of thinking about things, a repetitive pattern of thinking about things that needs to be questioned. So lots and lots to work with here, as of course you could expect with a Gemini new moon. There's this going to be a very creative time. Again, for individuals, going to be a really brilliant time to be doing a lot of things on your own, in your own way. But in terms of the collective, it's going to be, I think, quite chaotic. These are going to be times that we need to reckon with, and that Uranian impulse, the creativity, the innovation, that's the Uranian energy, which is part of the signature of Uranus. New things, new, sudden new things coming up, unexpected things coming up will be, in fact, very welcome, but we have to stay grounded to receive it and be ready to see your team lose. Be ready to see and even question the idea of having a team. This would be a good question at this time. Like, how much of my own personal identity is wrapped up in a flag or is wrapped up in an idea that is a propagandized notion of a nationality or a country or a people or whatever. And the more that that's tightly wrapped up, the more difficult you're going to find this time because those are the things that are being changed in a dramatic way. Venus, once she gets to her opposition with Pluto, is also going to be part of the trigger because that contributes also to the energy of Mars getting very close to Uranus in the second half of June. That intensity is definitely going to be breaking down finances, money stories, issues to do with what we're collectively working with in terms of money, values, all those different things. So we need to really look at things from a place of, okay, what do I know is real? And coming back to those perhaps Jupiter and Cancer notions of what is true and meaningful from the place of the emotional bonds, the family bonds, the connections with the things that are the most nourishing and the most auspicious, which is Jupiter and Cancer. I want to finish up with the fact that as I'm doing this, so Saturn is moving into, or rather Mercury is moving into a square with Saturn. That's part of this week's theme, building up to the lunation. It's completed its journey as we get into the weekend and the lunation that follows on the Monday. So just to say that that's part of something that I want to keep in mind, but it is separating at the time of this lunation. So whatever that is, it's expressing the tension of either restriction or a need to talk about something or a need to reveal something that is part of the bigger story of this moment. Saturn in Aries, again, being another planet that's not comfortable where it is, it's in exile. It's actually not technically in exile, it's considered to be in fall because it's in its exaltation point when it's in Libra, because Saturn is part of the dynamic of finding compromise, finding balance. And here in the Mars ruled sign of Aries, it's a bit frustrated. There's a pressure to hurry up and go. And with Mars there in Venus's sign, and again itself a little bit bogged down, there's going to be a lot of frustration that can be a kind of release when things start to feel like that valve is getting too strong. And my fear would be my one concern in terms of the astrology coming up is that around that first week of July, 4th of July, that whole initial phase, end of June and beginning of July, is when Mars meets Uranus, and their Mars especially is going to be squaring the nodal axis by the end of June. At the same time that we have the lunation in Capricorn, where the moon itself is not in good dignity, which does represent the public when we're talking about the mundane astrology. So there's a lot here that, the moon is going to be ruled by Saturn, squared by Saturn. That is both the moon and Saturn itself not being in an easy place at the same time that Mars meets up with Uranus and then squares the nodes. So lots of energy to work with here collectively, keeping things to the place of, the highest vision for everyone, the highest vision for you, your family, your life, looking at notions of abundance outside of material stuff. And this would be a great use of Jupiter in the last 2 weeks of its time here in Cancer, at the end of Cancer. How do I find abundance? How do I live through abundance and work with the abundance that is freely offered by Gaia, freely offered by everything that keeps us alive, and that has very little to do with the very limited and restricted commercial notion of abundance that is more a representation of Gemini. And I suspect that also this trine from Pluto to Uranus and Gemini, and the little mini grand trine, or the minor grand trine that is formed with Neptune there, is going to have us breaking down what even the notions of commerce, the notions of money, the notions of exchanges. This is going to be a big part of the certainly the next few years of our experience, that we've already seen that. And I think this is all part of what is coming to a head here in June of 2026. I think I've covered this chart, and I hope I haven't scared anybody. I don't say these things to make you nervous. I'm pointing out things that are astrological patterns that we are going to benefit from noticing, because we've been in some of these situations before, and when we see where we've come from and what this is culminating into, or where we're going into, it really helps us to adjust our behavior. Um, Many people are living way beyond their means, and that has been encouraged. It's part of a deliberate provocation that has been part of the consumer culture that is particularly a feature of North America, but not only, and that's also a European thing. But that's where the biggest change and damage is going to be felt now. And so if you are able to clear debt, to offload unnecessary, anything unnecessary in the material sense, it will be really, really helpful for you to get clear who you are and what abundance is. It's not about how much is in your bank account. It's not about you. You should never measure yourself by money available to you or money that you owe, whether it makes you feel good or bad about yourself. Never use that as a measure of what it means to be human, because this is not what it means to be alive, and this is a good time in our experience of humanity to really look at the brass tacks of what it means to be alive and to be human. Um, and certainly, money, finances, being on the losing team, or whatever it feels like in this moment in your time, in your experience, is not a reason to pack it all in. There's a lot of hope and a lot of inspiration and a lot of creative energy here in this summer, particularly, where we're going to see things that are entirely unexpected. And keep that mind open. If you get yourself off that notion of my team and their team, or the enemy and my homies, or whatever, get yourself off that notion, which is a completely contrived and false notion of duality. You will see where you can keep growing and expanding along with the rest of humanity. So don't fall into emotionalizing or pointing fingers of blame, or certainly don't fall into despair at this time. Think in terms of the constantly expanding, ever possible change that is being offered here, both by Uranus in a square to the nodes, as well as Uranus in its trine to Pluto, which we have never experienced in anyone who's alive. And in fact, and we've never experienced this minor grand trine in centuries, in any event. This is a novel time to be alive. And that means that we get to create things in really exciting new ways. So let's move through the chart. Why don't we just start with Gemini since we're here? We'll begin with Gemini, and I will end then with Taurus as we go forward. So I'm going to just take out a couple of things just to not have to deal with too many distractions. I want to take away the Ascendant. I did want to have Eris in here. I forgot to mention Eris is squaring Jupiter. I'll pull her back in. Do we want to have Black Moon Lilith? Yeah, I'll keep Black Moon Lilith and we'll talk about that as well. So I'll just briefly mention that Eris is, of course, squaring this lunation. That I forgot Chiron. Where is Chiron? I want to do a workshop on Chiron. I use Chiron in my readings and find it incredibly revealing in terms of um, our own charts. But of course, we're finding this very revealing. By the way, Chiron is squaring my North Node on top of Saturn squaring my Moon. So really fun times. No doubt that's why I spent quite a bit of the last week basically having naps. Yeah, so Chiron is also has been all this week as I'm doing this now, squaring Venus and is going to be squared by Jupiter, which is by the end of June going to be moving into Leo. But before Chiron actually perfects that square, or rather before Jupiter perfects that square, which I've spoken about before with the video on the Venus-Jupiter, Chiron will move into Taurus. So I will do a separate video on Chiron in Taurus, and I'd like to do a workshop on that, a date for which I will announce that. And maybe I'll try and do that around the 20th or 21st of June. Um, and I'll give you details of where to sign up and I'll come back through. You can also check out on my YouTube channel. I do posts. I really hate social media, so I do sometimes post on Instagram. I've given up on Facebook. I can't. And now on YouTube I post into this black hole where only a few hundred of you seem to interact with those posts. But if you want to find stuff from me, you can check out my posts on the YouTube channel, and there would be one way of finding the dates and things. But I will announce it in another video too. Right. So just to say that that's another part of this challenge and this tension that is coming up. We're ending this 7-year cycle of Chiron in Aries and moving into, again, a new sense of Chiron in Taurus, which again will represent a Venus-ruled sign that has to do with money values, our own self-worth, our own application of values and how we use money and stuff and the comforts of life is very Taurian as well. Food issues, all those kinds of things which will be coming through. Chiron is a teacher above all. This whole wounded healer thing I think is overdone, but it is about healing through understanding. It's healing through overcoming. This is part of being human, and I think Chiron represents that beautifully. Chiron is also where we shoot ourselves in the foot, where we are our own saboteur, and this is something that you can reflect on as well. Where am I my own worst enemy, especially with Chiron at the very unstable last degree of Aries? That's the anaretic degree, the unstable 29th degree of any sign, which is always going to be moving things a little bit awkwardly because there's this kind of feeling of we're done but not yet, and we're moving into the new thing but not yet, and it's all a bit tenuous, as is this moment in time around the Uranus square and around the new moon in Gemini, etc., etc., etc. So exciting times. The opposition before we get into you, Gemini. Actually, Gemini, this is practically your reading. Um, the Black Moon Lilith, which is another mathematical point. She does not exist in the sky. I use True Lilith. True Lilith is at 2130 of Sagittarius, so pretty much opposing this lunation because she is always in reference to the sun and the moon and their relationship together. What we're finding here is this perhaps fear or annoyance. Lilith represents the things that we're a bit pissed off about, things that we're not satisfied with. You can find here in the realm of Sagittarius morality, legal issues, justice and fairness in the highest sense, things to do with our faith and belief and religion, mm, political stuff, all of those things, which of course you don't need to be an astrologer to realize is part of the story of our times. So that again is something to absorb into this moment. And then the square, we've got Eris here in a square to Jupiter still. It's a one degree off a square, which is pretty tight. For the last couple of weeks, she's been really tightly squaring Jupiter. And and here what we're finding is this tension around being dishonored. And this is Aries. It's about the individual, the dishonoring, the not being acknowledged, the not being seen, not being heard, and causing a ruckus as a result of that. And so the tension here will be coming from what is the highest impact or the highest way to see things, how to behave in a way that brings auspicious results, how to use your wisdom, because it's this Jupiter that's trying to manage this very annoyed Black Moon Lilith over here in Sagittarius. Jupiter is also ruling the North Node that is just for the last 2 weeks, or sorry, the last 2 months in Pisces. Jupiter is really about like, let's hold this together. Let's do the right thing. Let's do the thing that we know is the best thing for all of us and be in that higher, more generous aspiration for humanity, for ourselves, for our families, etc. And so trying to manage the tension, which is a square, making the adjustments based on this feeling of not being seen, not being heard, it's still going to require something that requires, I think, the greater outcome for all of us, the greatest good for all of us, insofar as that's possible. Right. So let's start with Gemini. We'll do this on a personal level for Gemini Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. Now, if your lunation or moon, if your sun rather, or your moon or your ascendant is anywhere from 21 to we could even say the end of Gemini, to be honest, but let's call it 28 of Gemini, 27, 28 of Gemini, very, very tightly. You're really going to be feeling this. This is your new moon, something very personal to you. And of course, from the other side, if you've got anything from 0 to 6 or 7 degrees of Gemini, you're also really feeling this very, very powerfully. So it's a time for you to personally change and definitely listen to the introduction to understand how you are being called to change. And it's something that you can see yourself expanding into with this lunar cycle, where you can recognize that there are certain things that you may not be honest with yourself about, or that you are recognizing certain values that you may have placed in things that need to be revised or need to be questioned. This can include your social acquaintances or your friends, the people you spend time with. When you have Saturn in the 11th house, um, really what we're looking at here is anybody that you connect with, or people that you bond with, or people that you go through thick and thin with, which is generally the Saturn quality there in the 11th house. Those are lasting friends. Those are people that will have your back for a long time. So invest wisely in people. Invest your time in the right people, the right type of association or club or enterprise, and decide for yourself how you want to move forward in all of that, based on something that you see as long lasting, long term. Uh, it's worth the effort, let's say, to make the acquaintances, to make new friends, to find new people in your tribe, in your social circle, in the people around you. And you do have your Mercury, your ruler, is in the second house, which represents money, possessions, your values, as well as friends of no, meaning the 11th house is friends, but it's in a square to the friends there. So again, anything to do with not connecting with people on the basis of your values, you will not be able to sustain that, or you won't feel good with that, because your ruler here in the second house is showing you viscerally what it is that needs to show up. Who's got your back? That's it. Mercury in the second house. What supports you? Is it friends? Is it your possessions? Is it money? Is it your family? How do you connect with your family? With Jupiter there, all of these things may have been quite favorable for you in these last, well, 12 months pretty much, because Jupiter, since the 9th of June 2025, has been in your second house. So it's a really good time actually for you to really think personally about your future. How do you want to move forward in this moment in time, with the bigger vision of 3 years strongly connecting, and even going into 2030 and beyond, because you've got Uranus with you here until 2033. Um, and that's going to be part of the finishing up where the Uranus tension here with the nodes is going to be expressed with Uranus conjoining the South Node in your sign in 2030, May 2030. So really have a look closely at what it is that you want to fulfill, how you want to show up and be based on your values, based on perhaps what you need to connect with other people or how you need to be in connection with other people, and especially with the extended family or the people around you. All right, I will see you in the next video, Gemini. There's lots more to say, but there's more videos to come, especially with your ruler going retrograde. That will be a big part of your story in the next few days as well. So I'll try and come back to you soon and tell you about that. I'll see you in the next video, and happy birthday because it's your season as well. So happy birthday to Gemini suns as well. Okay, bye for now. Ah, you're not letting me go. Sorry, I realized what I've done here is I need to go by hour. There we go. And so here we have Cancer, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant, and where this lunation is happening in your 12th house, where you also have Uranus, but Mercury, which is ruling that, is in your first house. And this is where you also are still receiving Jupiter. That's a very solid blessing for you. It has been a year of what is considered to be a protective or favorable aspect. It is designed to help you feel more confident or more full, more expressive in who you are. Of course, it's ruled by the moon, which is in your 12th house. So there's something about what this moment presents that is not yet really presenting itself for Cancer, where the moon in the 12th can have you feeling kind of less than energized or ready to go. You may not be raring to go until your own season begins. This is something that you will find for all signs, but here I'm describing it for Cancer. When when you come upon the sign before yours, so that whenever the sun is 12 houses away from your sign, in this case here in Gemini, there is a fatigue, there's a wearing down, there's a need to take a break, a need to retreat. The 12th house is about stepping back and taking retreat, and this is part of what's going on. I have Cancer moon and ascendant, and my moon is being squared by Saturn. Maybe some of you are in the same boat. If you have anything from, let's say, 11 to about 16 degrees of Cancer, that will be true for you, or the sun perhaps as well. And here that dynamic is compounded by the fact that the sun and the ruler of your sign are in the 12th house. So it's draining. It takes away. It's removing the impact of the energy. So this is a very spiritual placement overall. Pardon me, Cancer. And that spiritual impact is going to be lasting with the impact of Uranus there for 7 years. And I've already done videos on that you can see more of. Pardon me, I'm just going to pause here so I can stop this cough. Okay, Cancer, we're back. As I was saying, it's often a time when health is not great, and it's a good time to kind of pull back. So if that's what you're feeling, this is a really awesome time to give yourself permission to do that. Just rest and charge up your batteries, because then a week later, of course, the sun goes into Cancer. And that's what we call, that's the solstice, the June solstice. That is when Cancer begins. And I'll do a separate video on that. And and then what we're finding then is the energy comes back. So this is part of the dynamic of astrology that is one of those mysteries that seems to apply to everyone. And so if you have strong placements in any sign, notice that when the sun goes into the sign before, that will be often a time when you need to rest. You need to be quiet and take some time. Um, and do listen to the introduction, because you're still very concerned with what's going on here, given that Jupiter's there, Mercury is there. Mercury is ruling this lunation from your first house of self. So there's an aspect of yourself that's included in this, that maybe you're benefiting from stepping back and recalculating. And that's what the Mercury retrograde cycle will be about. And I will do a separate video on that, because it will be, for you, very relevant as a Cancer. Um, And then soon after this new moon, the moon goes into Cancer. And so very quickly after the 15th, through the day of the 15th, the moon goes into Cancer. And already then you might start to feel yourself coming to a place of more comfort or familiarity that allows you to deal with what might feel like mental agitation, agitation through dreams, through unconscious awakenings, because we've got that Uranus squared the nodes in the 12th house, and the north node for you is in the ninth house, which is a very fortunate house, which has a lot to do with higher thinking, higher awareness. And then the third house, which is about everyday thinking. It's about communications of all kinds. And that's where the south node is, and it's being squared by Uranus in the 12th. So I will speak more about these things as we go forward. But this time for you can really be about having to reflect on different ways that you are communicating, how you want to communicate, how much you want to communicate. Also, for those of you like myself, working online, and if you are planning on working online, this is actually a really good time. You've got Mars in the 11th house. So even though Mars itself is in exile, Mars is the ruler of the 10th. So it's ruling Aries, but in the second house from the 10th, it's actually one of the exceptions to the rule where when the planet is not in strong dignity, the point is that it's actually second from the 10th house. So it's in the house of good fortune, of great gains. So it's a good time to take action. You may not have the energy to take action. That's certainly my case. There's a lot of things I had planned. I just had to shelve them. So who knows? It's not that things can only happen now, but just start to really pare back whatever is, strictly speaking, necessary and good for you, and then think in terms of what it is that you have the capacity to deal with. Having Jupiter in the first house is not necessarily a physical blessing. It can actually be depleting. This is the paradox of Jupiter in the first house, which can have so many things going on at once that it actually becomes very fatiguing. And this is why, again, we have to get away from this notion that Jupiter is great, therefore it's going to bring only good things in the first house. That depends very much also on your own first house, on your own sign of Cancer. Um, and of course, the quality of your moon. So even if you're Cancer rising or sun, if your moon, which is ruling you, is not in a happy place in the chart, or is struggling by squares or oppositions or um, difficult conjunctions, for example, then you will find these transits to your first house a little bit more fraught or a little bit more challenging, and that itself can explain why things don't necessarily go the way that many people will say that they will. Um, I think that's it. Oh, Cancer, yeah, of course, you've got Saturn in the 10th, squaring by sign for 2 years, squaring your first house of self. So that's already putting you through the test. But then if you look from this week, as I'm presenting this on the 8th of June, this whole week leading up to the new moon, Saturn is squaring Mercury as well in your first house. So there is something here again. It's kind of this stop start, this desire to do something, a wish to express, a wish to engage, and it's not really getting fulfillment. So it requires more effort or a simple delay, setting aside. Noticing that delay sometimes works out in your favor. It works out where it's like, oh yeah, if I'd done that then, it wouldn't have brought me the result I get now. So it's not always a bad thing, even if it's frustrating. Um, right. Okay. Look, Cancer, I think we've said it all. I will come back. We're going to talk about that Mercury retrograde and have a look at that for you, because it's really relevant for Cancer. It's going to be 10 weeks in your sign, and that's going to be quite a strong influence in terms of how you're seeing yourself. And of course, in terms of how Uranus is as it's being ruled by that Mercury retrograde, right? I'll see you in the next video. Leo, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant, we have this happening in this new moon is happening in your 11th house. And this is really wonderful. It's about your future. It's a vision for your life. What is the new vision? And this is very strong, especially because from your house of relationship, where Pluto is, to your house of your vision for the future, as well as your people, your tribe, your friends, your um, like networks or associations, people you spend time with. There's a big support, really lovely trine that is that can bring you new people, bring you new ways of reaching out into your future, ways of reaching out into society or into the public. That's the audience. Every self, kind of contented, good in your own skin Leo loves to have an audience. And if you're shy about having an audience, this could also be part of the role that Uranus is playing for you in the next 7 years, helping you to feel more comfortable, feel more of yourself. Uranus is about being very true to yourself. And in the 11th house, this could be where you start to realize, yeah, all this holding myself back, not letting myself shine, this is really not great. It's psychologically depleting because you're here to shine, Leo. That's what you're here to do. So this could be also a time, if you think about these 3 years to come, but the 7 years overall of Uranus going into your 11th, this could be a time where you really allow yourself to shine a lot more, test the waters, grow in your self-concept. And of course, Jupiter going into your sign is going to help you with that in many ways. I will do a separate video on that as well. There's a bit of a backlog. Um, you have Saturn in the house of the Father and house of Spirit and God, and this is the house of good fortune. And in some ways, you may feel that at this particular moment, things are being held back. It's not like things are kind of sort of falling into your lap at this time. You may feel like there's a sense that you can't really rely on good advice, or it's not really sure who you should be relying on, especially with Neptune up there as well. There may be some confusion about that. And again, with that, I think the Saturn retrograde will help you with this, but it's also about being really strict and very clear. Have good standards. And the other thing, if we tie that in, the Saturn up there in the 9th with the new moon in the 11th and everything I just said about Uranus, plus Venus, nice showing up in your first house now, which can make you feel more attractive. People will be more attracted to you, and especially as she's the ruler of your 10th house. That Saturn can have you realize you've got something to give and offer and share. You become the teacher you needed. You become the counselor you needed, that you do that now for others. So this is, I think, in terms of this moment in time, but also think ahead at least these 3 years of the cycle of this new moon for you. And I think you'll be able to find quite a lot working in your favor. And of course, we also have the nodal shift that's coming in to change you quite profoundly. And that's what this Uranus is maybe reassigning a new vision for your future. You'll see something completely different that you may not have anticipated now. Maybe it's also about who you are seeing or how you're seeing people, especially with the tie back to the 7th house Pluto, which is quite transformational in opposition here to that Venus. You're going to have a lot of planets coming into your sign in the next few weeks that are going to be impactful in terms of the collective. So there's a role for you to play, Leo. This is for sure. And don't think you have to play this role in terms of being famous or being like the showman or something like that. You just play your role. Leo is about the beacon. Be the beacon. Be shining that light, showing the way, taking the leadership. And that can be, leading from behind. You don't have to be noticed in a public way. Often we, in modern times, assume fame or popularity, how many followers, how many likes, uh, with reference to influence. That's not true at all. You can influence a small pocket of people and have, by ripple effect, an immense amount of influence on people's lives. So, Leo, make the most of this, and I'll see you in the next video. And oh my gosh, you've got this Virgo, you've got this South Node almost nearly leaving your first house. You'll be very happy to be rid of that, no doubt. And it's being squared by Uranus at the time of this new moon, which is in your 10th house. So lots going on for you that is going to start a whole new picture in terms of your personal ambition, the thing that you want to express going forward, how you want to start a new cycle of maybe 3 years up to, this longer cycle that I was talking about in the introduction. Do watch that because there's a lot of information about collective shifts and the bigger timing of things that will impact you particularly strongly in terms of your career or your public profile, um, your personal ambition, even your marital status, because this is also part of that story. um, Jupiter is still in your 11th house. It's about to go into your 12th house. So because it's ruling the North Node in your house of relationship, and it's also in a square to, well, basically a square to Chiron and especially to Eris, there may be something here in a relational dynamic that is about to really take off, something that is important and very big for you. Um, Based on a recognition of something that needs to change, something that needs to stabilize. You've got Saturn in the 8th house. There can be a recognition that it's time now to make a big change. I've tolerated this long enough, or I need more stability. Therefore, we're going to really hunker down and decide on this next step together, whatever it is. And that could be business or it could be your intimate relationships. But this new moon is showing you that there's a new thing starting. So listen to those dates at the beginning of the video. You'll find the lunation dates also underneath this video. And you'll get some ideas about what was going on over the last 3 years that is going to be shifting. You're changing now and moving into a new phase. So your ruler, Mercury, is on the verge of a retrograde. It's going to start the retrograde at the end of June, but it's moving in its shadow phase now. So Mercury retrogrades at 16 degrees in your 11th house, and it goes all the way to 26 degrees, which is roughly where Jupiter is right now. So what is going on with Jupiter at the time of this new moon is going to be something that Mercury picks up on as it stations retrograde. So this can have something to do with the vision that you have for yourself, your vision of the future, expectations around earnings potentially, because Mercury is also second from the house that it rules in the 10th house. So this could be about renegotiating income, salary, money that comes to you through the career you have or through the things that you do, big gains of some description. Or friends. Of course, Mercury represents friends. This could be an elder sibling. Mercury is also siblings. And especially in the house of the elder sibling, there may be something here about an elder sibling that becomes new or a new phase in their life as well that may or may not involve you directly, but it's certainly something that you will notice because it's, your ruler connecting there in the 11th house. What else is coming up? Yeah, so Pluto again, long already, more than 3 years in your 6th house, in a trine now, building a really strong trine, which is the theme of this summer, really, or this middle of 2026, with this Uranus that is squaring the nodes that are really personal to you in the angular houses of your chart, the 1st, the 7th, and the 10th. So there's something here that is about maybe jumping into a new status, a new career, a new ambition for yourself. And it really does concern your everyday life because of that Pluto 6th house thing. There's a new job maybe on the horizon, and that's part of your ruler there in the 11th house saying there's something to reconsider. And this is going to be the Mercury retrograde. I'll do a separate video on that. Venus in the 12th house, um, and that's she's kind of paving the way for Jupiter, who's going to move into the 12th house as well. First, we'll get the moon, then we'll get Jupiter, then we get the sun moving into the 12th house. So there's a lot going on in your 12th house as well. And that's about foreign lands, about faraway places, about things that are hidden from you as well, that can be things that are unconscious. But this is also going to be impacting your 9th house of your sense of purpose, your higher purpose. So really deeply reflect now on your personal ambitions and the things that you want to accomplish and allow for novelty. Don't be destabilized if something happens, like your job disappears or suddenly you're expected to take on a different role or something. Know that this is where you innovate. This is where you are recalibrating, and that has been on the cards for a long time, but especially now the change is being revealed or triggered in some way in the next couple of months, but especially over the next 3 years. All right. Good luck with all of that. Then, Virgo, I'll see you in the next video. Libra, you know what, Libra? Just give me a second. I know you will because you're super patient because you're Libra. I'm just going to move things back a little bit because I want to keep the lunation in the same sign. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult to keep explaining what's going on. Okay, Libra. Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. Of course, now the lunation has lost its 24-degree point, but that's, you know, that because you saw what just happened. So, Libra, you are in this phase of something different and big and new happening in terms of your vision for life. What is life all about? This has been a big part of the story of Uranus already since 2025, tiptoeing its way in here. And now it's the story. It's a very big part of this moment of June into July. And the nodal axis is squaring that Uranus from your sixth house of your everyday work, where the North Node is, your sixth house of schedules and habits and the everyday schlepping and all the stuff that has to be done. And then the 12th house, where you have the South Node and where it's moving out from the end of July into your 11th house. So you've had a real opportunity to change your attitude around your work. um, you're maybe seeing your spiritual self included more in your life in a general sense. And this is going to be part of the potential for big change that's happening here at the lunation, as this new moon is giving you a new sense of what your life is all about. This can also be connected to your father. The ninth house can be fathers, can be second marriages, can be in-laws. It's ruled by Mercury in the 10th house of your status and career. Mercury has been in a square this all the week building up to this, has been squared by, or has been squaring Saturn, which is your exaltation ruler. So always interesting to find what Saturn is doing in any given chart. Venus, your ruler, is in a new sign now. She's in Leo. She'll go quickly through Leo. She gets right through Leo in the next 3 weeks. Very, very quick through Leo at this point, going into the, or maybe 4 weeks going into June, into July. But that's very favorable because it looks like whatever this is tied into this new sense of what it is that you're going to be doing or how you see yourself. It can connect you to socializing, to groups, to people, to friends, um, to a higher vision of your future or even earnings and income. And of course, she's just met Jupiter in the week before this lunation in your 10th house. So that's an amazing place to have Venus and Jupiter coincide. And that we've already done a video on that. You'll find my take on that for you in a video from 2 weeks ago. I had to take a little break there, so you'll hear that in the introduction. Um, and so this is your Venus is pointing the way to a new future, while the Sun is in its house of joy. It loves being in the ninth house, so it's all about this big vision for something that's quite new. So think about these 3 years to come, how you want to express that, a sense of higher vision and purpose for yourself, or another second marriage, possibly. Um, Mars rules your seventh house of relationship. It's in your eighth house of marriage, and it's ruled by Venus, your ruler. So that's all possible. I would need to see your own chart for that to pan out. But yeah, Pluto's in the fifth house of romance and love, self-expression, and it's trining that Uranus in the ninth house. So maybe you're going to meet somebody um, in a sudden and unexpected way through a friend, perhaps, or through doing something that you love to do. Again, these would depend on your chart. I'm just trying to pull out what the astrology is pointing to here in a general sense. But this is big picture thinking for you, Libra. So think in terms of a longer vision, a longer future. Um, don't worry if the little details have not sorted themselves out. Think in terms of the big picture and keep moving in that direction. This is what this energy is telling us here. And that will show up for quite some time to come. All right, I will see you in the next video. Scorpio, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant, your ruler is in the house of relationship for you, and it's ruled by Venus at the top of your chart in the 10th house of your ambition and social status. And Venus herself is in a sextile to Uranus, which is being squared by the nodal axis. So something going on in terms of your public life or your expectations around career, perhaps marriage, marital relationships. Um, Something to do with the work that you're doing, and it's going to change rapidly over the summer between June, July, and August. Really notice that things are going to move fast, moving rapidly for you in terms of what needs to change. This is going to be also with reference to perhaps other people's money, how money comes to you, This is where the lunation is. The new moon is in the 8th house of other people's resources, how you share resources with other people. That's the house of intimacy. Um, it's how you express your intimacy with others, whether it be psychologically, emotionally, sexually. Uranus is there, and it's squaring the nodes. The North Node is just ending its journey through your 5th house of self-expression and your sex. That's the sex house, the romance house. It's combining with the 5th and 8th house combos, especially with your ruler in the 7th house. That could be very, very interesting new dynamics in relationships, not to say potentially downright kinky, because we're looking at Uranus in the 8th house and squaring the North Node in the 5th house. And with also the trine to Pluto in your 4th. So there's a big shift that's happening with you that has perhaps to do with a bit of a fear of what's coming next, because the Pluto in the 4th house can have you feeling a little bit like heart pinchy at the moment because of what's coming next. It can be a bigger sort of excitement slash anxiety around big change. Neptune is in your 6th house for a long time now to come. It's going to be there for 14 years. And the fact that Neptune is there in relationship with Pluto and Uranus, which we'll talk more about again as we go through the month of June, that dynamic can have you maybe a little bit confused around work. But don't worry, your ruler Mars also is ruling that 6th house, and it might be about creating new associations with people with that Mars in the 7th, or you're getting to more clarity around who you should no longer be in relationship with, because Mars is about severing, cutting, separating from things. And um and it's ruling your 6th house of the everyday, where we also find Saturn asking you to get real, asking you to be serious about whatever this thing is. And then with Venus at the top of your chart, these are angular houses. So your 4th, your 7th, and your 10th house are really important backbone kind of energy, solid structural energy for your chart, especially when your ruler is in one of those houses. And then Venus at the top of the chart is just kind of paving the way for soon Jupiter 2 weeks later to move in there. Uh, you're going to have really over the course of the next few weeks a lot of activity in your 10th house. So whatever this is, I would say be really open and honest with yourself first and foremost, checking in with any fears, any anxiety around change, being open to change. It's not always your favorite thing as a fixed sign. Um, being honest as well. And one of the things about your, the being a bit cagey at times, being a bit secretive or cagey, is having that, Gemini in the 8th house for Scorpio. Um, so this would be an opportunity for you to recognize where you need to really be clear with yourself and others as well. And so that with this long range vision for the future, this of course has to do with occult stuff as well. Mercury is the ruler of astrology. 8th house is occult subjects and astrology and things along those lines, tarot, all that stuff. And it's in the 9th house, which is also related to astrology by the dynamic of counseling. So the 8th house is the mystery aspect of it, the hidden occult details of it, and the 9th house is the dissemination of that. And the two of them work together in terms of astrology. So this could be something where you're thinking, screw my job, I don't want to do that anymore, I'm going to be an astrologer. So there you go. And this would be a great time if that's what's coming across your plate at the moment. And Jupiter going into your 10th would also reinforce that opportunity to make a big change. Right, we're going to come back and talk about that Jupiter and all the other things that we've missed here in the next few days, and I will speak to you in the next video. Sagittarius, your ruler is in the 8th house, having just met with Venus, who's now moving into your 9th house at the time of this new moon. And the moon itself is in your house of relationship. That's a pretty big deal because this is a cycle that you get once a year, which is a regeneration around relationships. A sense of something happening in the partnership area of your life, and that can be your intimate partner or your business partnerships, so relational dynamics of all kinds. So it's not necessarily a particular person, but it's how you relate as well. And this is very timely for you because with the change that is newly brought since the end of April into your relationship sector where Uranus is, this is the first time you're having a new moon here, and it's angular to you, so very significant for you. I should have mentioned that for Gemini, so tell your Gemini friends. So this is the first lunation after this, the Uranus ingress. So this is a novel situation, a novel energy altogether. And and this is about your way of relating. And something's changing here in a major way because you're also having the nodal axis squaring from the 10th house and the 4th house back to the 7th house. So there's something here that's quite major in terms of your sense of ambition, personal ambition, or relational ambitions, career ambitions, or the way that you want to relate to people, whether they be clients or business partners or life partners. Something really major shifting here. It could be that there's a need to move because of work or a need to move because of a partner's story. Because the 8th house is where we find Mercury, which is ruling the 7th. So this could be a story of I have to change because my partner is changing. Like I have to move house, I need to move to another place, another country, or I need to make a change that may not be specific to moving house, but it could be about your relationship to what grounds you, what makes you feel stable and secure, for example. Um, and then, of course, you still have Pluto going through your third, and it's trinal now to trining that Uranus, which is new, it's fresh energy, and it's opposed by Venus now in your ninth house. So this could be something to do with learning, teaching. The third house, ninth house axis is about that. Again, the notion of change around the neighborhood, around where you live. Mars is in your house of work. Mars is in the house of its joy, by the way. It loves to be in the sixth house, even if it's debilitated in the sense that it doesn't love to be in Taurus because it feels a little slow and sluggish. Um, not too bothered by Taurian things. Um, or at least it's bothered enough that it makes the extra effort. Let's say that's not a fair thing to say about the Mars, but it's like it's it struggles. It has to work extra hard, or it really pushes to the point that it can feel that things are hard. But Mars is up for the task. So, um, and then it's ruled by Venus in the ninth house. So there's part of having a vision around here, and your ruler is on the verge of moving into that visionary place. So you're going to be really moving in a very dynamic new way. Whatever it is that you're being asked to change or let go of here in the middle of June, just don't look back. Just do it. It's time. This is a big, big shift for you, and I will come back and speak about it again because this story is part of the minor grand trine as well. I just can't include all of it because it gets to be too many points, but you see how huge this time is, and this is where the new moon is highlighting the newness. So do listen to the intro. There's a lot of information there about multiple cycles that are being triggered at the moment and being, showing us the years ahead. So take the notes of the dates there too. I'll see you in the next video. Capricorn, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. This lunation is in your sixth house of work, your everyday life, your health habits, your structures for your everyday, the things that keep you going, basically, are the sixth house, like the exercise, the regime that you do to, keep track of what's in the fridge. Do I need to take stuff to the laundromat? Whatever. That's your sixth house work, the actual nuts and bolts of work as well. So something new is happening here. There's a big change, and that is especially true because not only is the new moon here, but also Uranus is being squared by the nodes at the same time. And because Uranus is squared by the nodes being in your sixth house, with the north node finishing up in your third house of choosing and using your willpower, finding your voice or saying what you need to say in a way that can be heard or in a way that you need to express. And this can be your local space, your neighborhood, what's coming through skills and skills that you're developing. And where the South Node has shown you you're no longer interested in whatever the thing was before. Your vision for what life is all about is changing dramatically. So something here can change you quite dramatically. This may be health related, and I say that because we're looking at an issue of sudden change and something dramatic happening in your sixth house. And I would need to see your natal chart to know that for sure. So don't take this as you're Capricorn, therefore you're going to get sick. It's not about that. It may be part of the story. If there's a health issue, then this is something that is going to be turning your life around. It's going to be changing your whole vision of why you're here, changing your vision for what life is all about. And it's quite massive. So your ruler Saturn is in the fourth house, and it has been squared by Mercury, which is in your seventh house of how you connect with people, what you're talking about. This is where the retrograde cycle is going to be. So your relational dynamics are changing. And that can be a new relationship that's coming in or that needs to be kind of tested, road tested, especially because Jupiter has been here and bringing you a lot of harmony or reality in your relationship sector, bringing you what you needed, let's say, in relationship in the best way possible. So Jupiter can often in the seventh house bring an appropriate or helpful relationship, but it can also disturb a relationship, separate you from a relationship which is actually impeding your life journey. Either way, in the long run, it's going to bring you the blessings of Jupiter. That's the whole point. And Jupiter is ruling your third house, where the North Node is. So this is also part of an ongoing dynamic over the last year, basically, which is winding down now. And I think this new, sudden, whatever this is going to give you insights into the next thing. So this is about your work, your health, your how your life is going to look and feel to you. And these are the Uranian insights that are coming through this moment in time at the new moon, which is again triggering the quality of newness. We're starting something different and new. And do listen to the introduction where you get a lot of information about the dates that are relevant to this time. So Saturn, again, being in the fourth house, is starting to slow down through the end of June and into July. So it's mostly in July that Saturn is pretty much at the degree that it's going to be retrograding. I'll do a separate video about that. But this is a time for you to really look at um, your what it is that you need to be happy. That's the fourth house with your ruler in it. You know, what do I actually need to feel grounded, to feel solid, to feel secure in my life? How do I establish that? And I think with this change in terms of work, that might be part of it. Something needs to give in terms of your everyday. There may be a need to change based on things that have to do with what supports you. That can be financial, or it can be issues around like feeling overwhelmed by being a support for other people. That's part of the potential here with the Pluto, as it can work in both directions. It can be you having to support other people or you getting loads of support from people. And that will probably vacillate depending on a number of other factors in the chart. Like here, for example, we have Venus and then slowly Jupiter going into your eighth house. So there's going to be a lot going on in your house of other people's money, what other people bring to you, or what you can expect to receive from passive income, things like that. So in that case, it's going to be quite nourishing for you. Okay, Capricorn, I think we've said it all. I'm going to come back and speak more about these things as we go forward. Okay, bye for now. And Aquarius, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant, this lunation is trinal to you. So this new moon is happening in your fifth house of self-expression and how you want to reach out into life itself, how you want to be yourself, how you want to show up in terms of what you love to do, how you're expressing what you love. Even a person that you love. There can be a new thing here, a new relationship, perhaps through work, maybe a relationship that you discover. It's Mercury that's ruling the fifth from the sixth. There may be a relationship that you meet somebody at the dentist or you know, at work or whatever. That's possible because this is about the house of love and you're expanding your love life or your sense of joy and happiness, but it's coming through the everyday. Maybe it's finding a way of settling into a routine or a job that you love to do. This is also part of that. This is Mercury retrograde coming up. I will express that more clearly when I do that separate video, but just keep that in mind that whatever this is, it's going to require a bit of adjustment as we move into it. It's not going to happen just kind of like bing, bang, boom, and you're done. It's going to be a period of adjustment, and all the more so because we've got a really strong trine now, building ever stronger to Pluto from Uranus in your fifth house back to Pluto, which is very personal to you. So you're going through a real big shakeup in terms of yourself, what you love to do, how you want to express yourself. Maybe if you have children or if you're thinking about children, this will be a big sudden expression of change in their life as well, a novelty, something that needs to be done differently, or something that you have to think of differently, especially with reference to Gemini. A new creative way of expressing you, because Gemini is also about the sort of the things, the manual dexterity and the things that you do, handicrafts and being an artisan, this kind of thing. That's Gemini as well in your fifth house, so that could be something to consider. I will come back and do lots more talking about all the different things that are shifting, but this is the prime focus. It's how do I express more of me? How do I be more of me? And because Saturn is your ruler, your traditional ruler, and Uranus is the modern ruler, again, I leave that up to you. I work with Saturn as the ruler, but they both matter in this case. So I still give emphasis more to Saturn. It is in your third house of willpower and choice. So there's part of what's going on here that you need to own, you need to take responsibility for. So new circumstances are presenting. What are you going to do about it? This is the third house where you have to make these choices, where change is inevitable. But because of Saturn, there can be a certain amount of change is coming, but it's ever so slow. There's an Irish expression which is like the good times are coming, be they ever so far away. So this could be part of that. Um, right, and many of you don't know that I'm Irish as well. So anyway, so there we are with the Saturn in the third house. There's a lot that you need to sort out, all the maybe paperwork that you need to sort out, or learning new skills, developing new things that allow you then to express this new way of being in the fifth house. There's going to be quite a lot of activity in your fifth house over the next few weeks. Quite a lot of energy because of the Mars coming in there and really creating a lot of drive. And then very soon, in the end of July, just weeks away, you're going to have the North Node in your house of self as well. So, and equally, you're going to have a lot of things going on in Leo, your house of relating. So, if it's about romance or self-expression through love, then there's going to be an answer coming through July, more so than now. Things can be new and developing, but they start to present themselves in ways that become much more clear to you as you go through July. And that you are part of this whole basket feature, you whatever's going on in your Aquarius house, Sun, Moon, or Ascendant, especially if you have the first 10 degrees of Aquarius, this will be very, very keen for you, very, very keenly felt. You're part of that basket configuration that is going to come up every time something comes into Leo. So the cradle, the basket, le berceau, the panier, whatever you want to call it. It's the bamboo basket in English. I think that's about it. Aquarius. So you got this ruler, the ruler of your fifth and the sixth, like I said. So be clear on details. Take notes. Check the dates that I gave you in the beginning. It's a good time for you to really plan ahead, especially if it has to do with day-to-day work or issues around health. I'm not suggesting you have those. I'm just saying if that's your case, I can't see that from a general thing, but the sixth house has to do with health issues or even open enemies, people who are annoying and people who are difficult to work with. If that's the case, this can be a brilliant reset around that. All right, I'm going to leave it there. I need to see your own chart to see more of those details. So good luck with all of that. I'll see you in the next video. Pisces, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. This lunation is in your fourth house of home. Where do you live kind of home, as well as how do you feel about home, or what makes you feel at home, what makes you feel happy, what do I need to feel secure? This is the fourth house. And that's an emotional security, a psychological, or even a financial security. This is a big theme at this moment. Uranus is there, so that's going to be a theme for a very long time, and there may be quite a lot of disruption around that. And here what we have by the middle of June is this square with the North Node in your own house of self, yourself, your appearance, your way of showing up, the way you navigate through your life. And that's being squared really strongly through the middle of July, sorry, June. It already is. I'm doing this on the 8th of June. It's already squaring that. But that square is quite intense going through there. And so the South Node is also about relating how you, to whom and how you relate. It's changing in a big way. So maybe based on where you live or based on how you need to feel. Do I feel happy with these people? Are they the right people? Am I going in the right direction? Um, and then the new moon itself is, it's also ruled by Mercury in your fifth house of children, happiness, expressing something of yourself. And Jupiter, which is your ruler, is there with Mercury, but they won't actually meet at this point. They're not going to meet until well into Leo, because Mercury will retrograde just before it meets up with Jupiter, and then Jupiter moves into Leo, into your sixth house. So at the moment, there's a lot of energy for feeling this kind of sense of positivity, um, expansion, potential, maybe even love, the dynamic of love, because Mercury rules your seventh house of relationships as well as your fourth house of home and family. Maybe you're going to decide on moving in with somebody that you love. Um, this would be something that is going to be, there's going to be a give and take around the Mercury retrograde. So it's not to say that you shouldn't do that. It's just to say that there will be some giving and taking in the course of June, July, and into the first week or so of August. Maybe up until the 10th, I think it is, of August. Anyway, I'll do a separate video on that. What else do you need to? Your exaltation ruler, Venus, has now moved out of your fifth house, um, and she is now in the sixth house of everyday work. So that's quite pleasant. It means that whatever you're doing with a sense of happiness and joy. When Jupiter, your ruler, comes in there, that's also going to be true. It'll be busy. Things will be busy, but not necessarily problematic. It's just going to be a lot. So you will learn to really appreciate your work and feel that sense of enjoyment of work, or you will enjoy the people you're working with, um, or you will have a sense that there's a lot going on and you need to adjust that. So that can be worked out in a way that is conscious, that you start to realize, yeah, I need to do a bit more of this and less of that, for example, being more pragmatic, because Jupiter rules your 10th house as well, which is your kind of like your vocation or what it is that you're ambitious for, how you want to be seen and remembered. What is your reputation? That's 10th house. It's like, how do people recognize you? So the reputation is kind of like 10th house in terms of people seeing, oh yeah, that's the lady that does whatever. And then the 11th house is like, well, how do they do that? Do I like her? Do I not? That's the appraisal version of the 11th house reputation. So either way, when Jupiter goes in the sixth, what you're doing every day is going to impact those things, particularly so if it's around your career or even marital status, potentially. For a woman's chart, Jupiter is the spouse. Um, what else? What else? And for a man's chart, Venus would be the spouse. So that would apply to both of you. Um, Anyway, I think I'm running out of things that I need to say for you, Pisces. I think it's going to be, generally speaking, a really good time for you to be honest with yourself about how you actually feel and what you need in your lifetime to be happy. This is a longer cycle. This can be about literally your home, meaning where's my address, or it can be around what do I need to feel secure that can be taken with me anywhere I go. The unsettled feeling is coming from the inside out. So even if things are not settled in terms of where you are, you always have to come back to the quiet space inside you to sort that feeling of unsettled um, ness. And remember that the fourth house is your psychological and emotional happiness as well, keeping those things in mind. All right, Pisces, I will leave it at that. I think that pretty much covers it. Um, Mars is in your ruled by Venus in your sixth, the everyday work house. Mars is in your third house. That's really good for really being strong and focused and using your willpower. Beware of being sharp with people, although Mars in Taurus is not really that sharp. It's more of the slow, contemplative um, heaviness of Taurus that Mars represents there. So it wouldn't really be a risk, a huge risk anyway. Pardon me. And yeah, and then of course it's going to go into your fourth house and meet up with Uranus as we get into July. So whatever this is in the middle of June, take note and know that things are going to continue to evolve, and in surprising and unexpected ways as we get into July. That will be all about that foundation. It could be that there's jobs or things that are happening for you, opportunities, work, etc., that takes you to a new home, that takes you to a different place, especially because you're going to have Jupiter in your sixth house. It rules your 10th house. Pluto is in your 12th house of foreign lands, and Uranus is in your fourth house, trining that. Neptune and Saturn in your house of income and money, what supports you. So maybe big changes on the cards here for you. All right, I'm going to leave the Chiron for a separate video. Same thing with the Mercury retrograde. We will come back and talk about your ruler, Jupiter, changing signs as well. All of this in the next couple of weeks that we will look at all of these really big events coming up. Okay, see you in the next video. Aries, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. This is happening in your third house, so there's a lot of choice to be made here. Lots of surprising developments in the busyness of every day. So the lunation itself, the new moon is in your third house, about perhaps looking at connections with friends. Because you've also got Pluto in the 11th, this can also be part of the bigger social structure that you're maybe restructuring your future, restructuring your connections with people, people that you that you hang out with or that you network with or that you work with even. This can also be about the ways that you work in practical, everyday, like common sense ways. This is about skills as well. The third house is a house of skills. The ruler, Mercury, of this lunation and of the Uranus that's there is in your fourth house. And it's in Cancer, ruled by this moon, as you can see from the beginning. So do watch that initial presentation, because that's all about these times, these unusual times that we're in. And and this dynamic suggests that there's something here tied to the need to have fun or enjoy or feel good about what you're doing, feel good in your own skin. And that's not been so easy because we've had Saturn in your sign for Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. Saturn is squaring Mercury, or Mercury rather is squaring Saturn all the week before this new moon. So it's still in an orb of square at the new moon, but it's moving apart. And so there's something here that might require some adjustment that you need to take responsibility for, to engage in that new thing, or to engage in this new way of being, or the new place that you're living in, or this new potential relationship with family, because the fourth house is lineage, it's your people, it's your family of origin, it can be maybe connecting with children potentially as well. And the third house is siblings, extended family, neighbors, neighborhood. So there could be something here. Again, depending on your natal chart, where's your IC and all those questions, that can be something to do with literally where you live, or having to restructure home, family, who lives at home. Um, are you moving out? Are the kids moving out? Is your roommate moving out? What's going on? And so these are the different questions that you can look at. Mercury rules your sixth house, where the south node, pardon me, the south node is there. So Virgo is your sixth house, ruled by Mercury, which is currently in the fourth, where we also find Jupiter. And recently, up until the week before this, Venus was also there. The two of them were conjoined on the 9th of June, and then Venus moved into, um, on the 13th of June, moved into the fifth house, into Leo. So there's been a lot of activity around home that may involve work. So maybe you're considering working from home, or maybe home is part of a project for you that you're having to work on, something that you're doing in a new way, that maybe, based on something you're choosing or something that you're being forced to deal with, making an adjustment to potentially, you know, big changes around the work that you're doing. So the North Node is moving through your 12th house in opposition to the 6th house nodal axis, and that is where we find the square from Uranus in your 3rd house of choice. So this part of this bigger story is the 6th house, 12th house axis can be issues around being, um, you know, playing the victim or doing something in a way that feels like you have no choice. And what this new moon and Uranus in the 3rd house is saying is you've got all the choice that you need. You have loads of choice. You just need to deal with it. And your ruler, Mars, which is in the 2nd house, and itself is ruled by this Venus in the 5th house of your sort of self-expression, is giving you an opportunity to choose based on values, maybe based on money, maybe based on income and things that you need to um, you know, to be able to spend. You know, Venus is in the 5th house of investments, but also gambling. This would be a, you know, never gamble more than you can afford to lose, but this would be an opportunity to invest, or if you're good at that. This is not financial advice, and definitely don't want to take financial advice from me. It's just to say that if that's part of your restructuring or part of your story, then this could be part of the deal as well, where you're really looking at where you're going to place your money. What are you going to do about all that stuff? And it's changing based on this bigger decision, this bigger choice that you need to make. But you, with Saturn in your sign, have to take full responsibility for what's going on. And, you know, beware of saying they did it or it's because of them or whatever. If you hear yourself saying that, you know you're fully ensconced in your victim mode. So this would be the time to notice that. And certainly whatever is going to happen here can be quite sudden and unexpected. 3rd house, of course, being around siblings and extended family, there can be events with reference to extended family that then change the whole ball game, change everything. Um, not sure what that might be. There's a trine coming from the 3rd to Pluto in the 11th. That can be something to do with an elder sibling, potentially an uncle. Either way, whatever that is, it's going to be quite surprising because you, of all people, have this very, very strong, you have the very true Gemini 3rd house, because you're a natural, you know, zodiac as an Aries rising particularly, but even as a sun and moon, 3rd house from Aries is um, is Gemini. So you get that exaggerated or amplified sense of what that means. So big change is on the way here for you, and look at that 3 years ahead to see how you want that to pan out, because it's not like you don't have choice in how you manage the change, right? So this is definitely part of this moment in time. I would say also you can be impulsive up to a point, but you, whatever your impulse is going to be telling you, Mercury is going to have you reconsider. So don't think that it's going to be completely done. If you act on impulse, you can expect things to be revised in the next few weeks ahead, throughout July. Okay. I will see you in the next video, Aries. Take care. Taurus, you're the last ones here. Um, Right. So for you, this is the 2nd house new moon, and you've got Uranus in the 2nd house too. And this is all about money and income and what you have at your fingertips, what's an available resource for you. And so this is something that you're able to contribute in terms of maybe family, or how you want to reach out into family, or how family is changing for you. This can have something to do with children because the South Node is in the 5th house and it is squaring Uranus in the 2nd house. So maybe this is something to do with kids or siblings. Depends on your age, obviously, and your natal chart. I would need to see all of that. I can't, and this is only general stuff, but it's important just to give a few notions of what this could be. Um, and given that this newness is all in your 2nd house of money and resources and values and what your personal value feels like, and the South Node is in the 5th house of how you express yourself and how that's been changing, or how you relate to your children and how that's been changing, with the North Node in the 11th house of your future. Um, it's time for something really major to change in terms of your relationship to money and family and values. And that's part of the Uranian dynamic of change anyway, but it's emphasized by this new moon here. To look back over the last 3 years, I gave you the dates in the beginning, and go forward in the next 3 years to see how all of that is how you want things to shape up. Your ruler Venus is in the 4th house now. So just in the days leading up to this lunation, Venus was with Jupiter in a really auspicious connection. I did a whole separate video on that, so I'm not going to do too much about that here. But that was in the third house of choice and what you bring, like the skills that you bring to the table, as it were. This is the second house of resources, which can be equated with that in the sense that you can also be using yourself as a resource. So, what resources do you have at your disposal? And this can be where you get some interesting surprises or developments that happen in sudden ways, things that are happening in new and different ways. As Venus is in your fourth house, and there's going to be then Jupiter, and then a lot of energy going in through July into your fourth house, there's going to be quite a lot of focus on what feels secure. Maybe that can be literally where you live. Venus is the ruler of your ascendant or your sun or your moon, so very important to keep track of. And this may be about property. It may be about purchasing property, investing in property, the value of property. Um, and then that can also be with reference to home in the bricks and mortar sense, or home in terms of your emotional sense of, where do I feel secure? Where do I feel happy? What makes me feel happy? And Mars is in your first house, so there's something here that's got you quite dynamic. And Mars is normally the ruler of your relationship sector. So there may be something you need to assert in terms of relating to other people. Maybe you need to step up a little bit more. Maybe you need to even defend yourself a little bit more. There may be something that needs to be, you need to take on board more of what's going on in the relationship. Um, And Mars is also ruling the 12th house, where you find Neptune and Saturn, as well as the Eris and Chiron conjunction. I'm going to do a separate video on that Chiron because it's coming into your house in just days after this lunation. It's all happening here. Things are accelerating here in June and July. Um, and so there's a preparation here. This what you're preparing for here is going to be a very personal change as Chiron moves into your first house of self and has you questioning your value, your own self-worth, your values as well. This is part of the second house dynamic, but it's also the theme of Taurus. And that can also be in terms of your overall well-being, your health, the way that you show up, the way that you're reaching out into life. So the other thing is that your ruler, Venus, is in opposition to Pluto, and she's gaining in opposition in the days following this new moon. And so there's going to be some intensification around this issue of home and work, or home and reputation, home and ambition. If you're married, this can be something literally about marital status, because you've got Mars, Venus, and Pluto in your the sort of backbone of your chart. The angular houses are the first house of self, the fourth house of home, and the roots of your chart and your inner foundation for life, or the literal foundation for life, your lineage. And then the seventh house is relational dynamics, including business partners as well as life partners. And then the 10th house is how you manifest all that out in the world, what it all amounts to, how people notice you, how people acknowledge you out in the world, and including what are your goals, your personal goals. What legacy might you want to leave? For example, so Venus is there in tension with that. There's a tension there between Venus and Pluto, where there's something that needs to be dealt with, or that you need to maybe be clear about in terms of what makes you happy. Is there anything that needs to be spoken? Especially with Neptune Saturn in the 12th house, ruled by that Mars in the first, there may be some doubts and worries, some anxieties that are there. Saturn actually does very well in the 12th house. It's the if we can call it that. It's the house of Saturn's joy, if Saturn can ever be experiencing joy. Um, it's the place where Saturn does very well. It structures the things that are not easy to pull together. It's getting serious about things behind the scenes. And this can be something where you're really looking at a number of different things by pulling yourself back into yourself, or into a kind of a situation of more retreating. This can also be the Venus in the fourth, where you're just delighted to stay home. Don't invite me anywhere. Don't let me go out. I just not interested. Just let me stay home. That can be part of this bigger picture for you, Taurus, as well. And that'd be fine. Of course, it's lovely to have those options, right? Um, I will come back in the days ahead and we're going to do separate videos for a number of the other things that are happening here. Be sure to listen to the introduction because there's a lot of information in that. And for everyone who has come this far, thank you for still being here. I always forget to ask, but if you haven't subscribed already, please do. And do all your comments, which I love to read. I really enjoy if you, especially if you have questions that I can answer. I'm very happy to help you. If it's a question about your natal chart, it's much less likely that I can help you. So please book a reading instead. All right. See you in the next video. Bye bye.